Pay and overtime doesn't come up often, but it's quite tricky. Let's look at ordinary pay. Workers are paid an hourly rate, say £12 an hour. So if Peter works for 10 hours calculating his pay equals 12 times 10, £120. Claire works 25 hours, calculate her pay is 12 times 25, £300. Not very difficult and therefore not many marks. And being this is mathematics, here's an example. They've made it a little bit more difficult. A company uses the following formula to calculate weekly pay. Pay is £9.50 times the number of hours worked plus £15. So Brian worked 26 hours. What was Brian paid? Well, over here we can see the pay was £9.50 times the number of hours worked plus £15. You'd be happy to know that this is a calculator question. It equals £262. Thank you very much. The company only pays for whole numbers of hours worked, which I think it might be illegal. But anyway, why is it not possible for someone to earn £150 in a week? Well, I've got a feeling how this might work out. But if the pay is 150, we know that the hours worked times £9.50 plus 15 is 150. So we can take away the 15. Hours worked times 9.5 is 150 minus 15, 135. And now we can divide by 9.5 to work out just how many hours someone would have to work to get 150. Divide by 9.5, hours equals 135 divided by 9.5, 14.21. Well, they're only paying for whole hours, therefore there are no whole hours that pays £150. Not a nice question, but at least it opens the door for an easy answer for question 3. Last week, Elsie was paid just under £150. What's the greatest number of hours Elsie could have worked? Well, we've just found out that it's around about 14.21 would give you 150. So I think it's 14. So let's just work out 14 times 9.5 plus 15, 148. Had she worked another hour, this would be 15. You get another £9.50, and of course that's over 150. So that is the maximum numbers of hours Elsie could have worked. Right. Pay and overtime. This is where it gets difficult. Workers are paid a normal hourly rate for normal hours. Workers are paid an overtime rate for hours above their normal hours. So they get a normal rate, and that's given in the question, so that's £12 an hour, say, for the first 35 hours. But the overtime rate is normally higher because the employee is doing the employer a favour. There's a rush on, they need extra time. Who wants to work 10 hours, the extra 2 hours in a day? They pay more for overtime. So it could be a given rate, £15 an hour for anything over the 35 hours, or it could be 1.5 times the normal rate. This is normal for a maths question because it's harder. You've got to work it out from the normal rate. And this is important. Be very clear which hours of work are normal and which hours are overtime. That is given in the question, but students get confused. So here's a tricky question from the past. It's all about Nico and his overtime, when it comes on to his overtime. First thing I do is have a think about this. Nico, his pay rate's £20 for each hour he works, and he normally works 35 hours. Any extra hours are overtime. Nico's pay rate for overtime is 1.5 times his normal pay rate. This is clearly going to be an overtime question, and what my first thought is, what is the overtime pay rate, and separate the normal and overtime hours. So if I have two columns, normal and overtime, the rate, well, for normal hours is 20. The overtime rate is 20 times 1.5 equals 30. And the normal hours, 35. This summarises all the information here. And I much prefer to see it like this. I know exactly what I'm looking at. But that doesn't bother me at the start. We just want to know Nico earns £700 in a week when he does not work any overtime hours. So we sort of have to guess that he's worked 35 hours. So A, his pay is hours times rate. 35 times 20 is 700. In 1 week, Nico works 38 hours. 38 is greater than 35. He's into overtime territory. How many overtime hours does he work? Well, 38 minus 35. So that is, overtime is 38 minus 35. He works 3 hours of overtime. For those 3 hours, he's getting the bonus rate of 30. So his overtime pay is 30 times 3. That's equal to 90. So he works his 35 hours for 700. He works his 3 hours for 90. His total pay is 700 plus 90 equals 790. The next week, Nico earns 1,060. How many hours of overtime did Nico work? You must show all your workings. Right, well, we know his pay is 1,060, so let's put that into the formula. So his overtime, what he earns in addition to his normal 700 is 1,060 minus 700. He gets 360 pounds of overtime. And if you remember, his overtime pay equals his hours of overtime times 30. So each hour of overtime he gets £30 and he's earning 360 pounds of overtime pay. So we divide 360 by 30 and that's equal to 12. It's never done till it's checked. If he works 12 hours of overtime, what's he going to get? He's going to get 700 for his normal 35 hours plus 12 times 30, which is equal to 1,060, which is what the question asks. Semi-satisfactory, hard, horrible question. Let's look at another horrible question. I haven't worked out the answer to this one. This was another question. I don't like this at all. Far too much information. Anyway, I haven't worked out the answer. Let's see how you get on. See you later.